Hello, everybody. Welcome to the day after deadline day. I'm here with Jer, and as we promised, we would be here a week after our last stream to sort of have a little bit of discussion about what happened at the end of the transfer window.
I didn't.
I'm not going to start by asking how are you feeling. I'm going to start by bringing back a segment from last week
Oh God.
because I kind of want to see. I kind of want to see the thoughts. So,
That was-
more like, grr.
You're such a YouTuber.
I know it's great. So how are we feeling? Are we feeling good? Are we feeling grr?
I'm all right. I'm all right, actually. I'm pretty calm about everything. I'm not a believer in the spectacle of deadline day. Like everyone, even when you've made like 8 signings, everyone gets wrapped up in that we didn't do anything in deadline day. So um, I I'm on the fence with the whole decision. Like I think everyone's in agreement. If we don't get injuries, we should be good enough. We should be okay. But if you get a couple of injuries, this is a massive gamble. And if it doesn't pay off at the end, there's only one place that fingers will be pointed and one very clear decision, which is January. And I think it should also be said because it's all the owners. Daniel Farke has said repeatedly over the course of this window that he has the final say on transfers. So there's possibly they've been giving him players and he's decided I don't want them. But it's also were the players good enough? Were the players even available that Leeds wanted? Were the right targets there? So all of that kind of stuff is like, how do you make the best team in the league better? And that was the remit, was to make it better. So I don't mind what Sheffield United did. I don't mind what Burnley did. I don't mind what Sunderland did. They all filled gaps that they needed to fill. That was their problem, not ours. And I don't, most of the players that they've signed outside of maybe Marcus Edwards and Enzo Lafay, I don't think most of those players would knock on the door of the Leeds starting 11. So considering we got Larry Ramazani sitting on the bench who cannot get into this team and he's a bloody good player. So yeah. And then when Stroke is back fit, you've got Ampadu in midfield with Gruev and Rothwell and Tanaka. And like, yeah, okay. The only problem being those, did we really try hard enough to get a 9? The 10 I can understand. I think it's a difficult position to get. I know they wanted Buendia, but that wasn't going to happen. So when you weigh all the permutations and everything into the equation, I'm okay with it, but I'll only be okay with it as long as it pays off. If it doesn't pay off, we'll come back to this moment and say this was the problem.
Yeah, I think on the surely the number 9 is the one that we can say that we pushed the hardest for, right? Because that was Cameron Archer. We heard a few days before deadline day. It was like we made a move for Cameron Archer. Didn't happen. Southampton didn't want it to happen. Yeah. A few days after that, we've made a move for Cameron Archer. And then, as far as I heard from various people, we tried 2 separate times on deadline day itself to see if we could sort Cameron Archer out. Yeah. So I don't think it was for lack of trying. I think it was more.
It's only Archer one player.
Archer is the guy, and if we can't get the guy done, there's no point signing anyone that doesn't quite fit, because
said that.
Yeah, it'd be a waste of funds. It'd be a waste of spot in the squad. So I think it's a little bit of a weird one.
I mean, like, we're in 3-year PSR cycles, so it could be a very smart move to wait till the summer and get up and then spend your money on Premier League level players, because the argument being, I mean, Alan Armstrong being linked yesterday, I mean, everyone got very excited for a couple of seconds, because really, does Alan Armstrong get into the Leeds team? Is he really? I know he's got a very good championship record, but that's where he is. And the same with Cameron Archer. Like, if you get promoted, you might have to buy these players. Will they really be worth it, or a waste of money, or will you regret that 6 million and 7 million quid when you get to the Premier League and you can't spend that money on a Premier League player because of PSR, because you spent it in January? So I do get all of that. I see all of that. I still think having all of your eggs in one basket and pushing for Archer was a mistake. According to Leeds live sources, they said that Adam Armstrong was offered to Leeds as a player, and Leeds said they didn't want him. So it was Archer or nothing. And I think if that's the case, Daniel Farke will tell us in the press conference that that's what they wanted. That I would imagine it was Archer and Buendia. Didn't get to 2 of them. That's it. No point.
Yeah.
But you have to now hope. And now that's the problem. We have the remainder of the last 17 games of the league, plus the FA Cup matches. We have to hope that nothing happens to Brendan. We have to hope that when he goes off to America in March, that he doesn't come back crocked. We have to hope Pascal doesn't pick up any more injury. We have to hope Joe Rodon doesn't get injured at all. We have to hope that Joe Pirro and Matteo Joseph can keep finding the net. And we have to hope that all of our wingers have to keep chipping in with goals to cover when the strikers don't score goals. So there's a lot of hope there. And I'm sick of saying that it's the hope that kills you at Leeds, but it might end up being that again, but There's nothing we can say right now that's definitive. We won't know about this. We can't say it's a disaster. We can't say it's the worst thing in the world. We don't know yet. We can't even say it was a smart move. We just don't know until the season pans out. And everyone else has gotten stronger. Leeds were already very strong. But I would have liked the 2. I would have liked the 10-9, and then I'd be very happy and confident going into the second half of the season. Right now, there's just a little thread of doubt that's in the back of your head of going, well, if only you did this. And I hate in situations where Leeds don't learn from the mistakes of the past. We have consistently not done well in January. Outside of the relegation season, Leeds have pretty much done nothing in January for 4 years. Underage, under-21 players are usually what they bring in. That's it. And that's what we've done here as well. We brought in Robbie Cook from Perclory as an academy goalkeeper. That's it. So you just don't want to be at the end of the season looking back going, well, what if? Well, what if we had done this? And what if we had done that? And you've left yourself in that position now.
Yeah. The example I've used to sort of justify it in my own head was the last time we were in a January window and we were like, we need to sign someone to play in the 9 because we need more surroundings there, was Augustin.
Yeah.
And that time out, we ended up with a loan with an obligation to buy, which, let's be honest, is probably how the Cameron Archer thing would have gone.
I agree. Yeah.
And
that was apparently the agreement. It was a loan with an obligation. Leeds didn't want the obligation.
And then if you would have ended up in sort of further down the situation, you probably land in a position of, well, if he's not good enough for the Premier League, we're ending up not only in that same position, but that very same position with Cameron Archer actually part of your squad and taking up a spot in your squad registration. So at that point, it's sort of, I can understand it, but I don't know. I'm glad we didn't force something, and there's something that I'm kind of glad that we did from a different perspective as well. And I noticed that you are also a fan pundit on Football League World. I pinged them some words over earlier this morning, and they asked, is there anything you'd like to praise your club for doing in this window? And a couple of things. One is actually sticking to our guns and saying, if it's not the right quality, if it's not the right personality, we're not going to make the move. Because a squad that sticks to its guns like that is one that is like, at least you've got a structure there, and at least you're like being managed in the right direction. And in addition to that, the decision to not part ways with Matteo Joseph is not one that I feel like gets made under the last ownership. I feel like under Radrizzani, you sell Matteo and you go, we'll either promote someone from the 21s or panic signing.
Yeah, and that was what the window in Willie Gnonto joined Leeds was a pure panic window. Like Willie Gnonto was a future prospect that Leeds were looking at further down the line. And then they made the mistake of sending it publicly, telling people that a plane had been sent for Cody Gakpo. He decides he doesn't want to come. Then they send the same player down to Marseille to try and get Bamba Dieng. He's sitting on the airplane and decides, actually, do you know what? Nice sounds much better. I'm heading off to Nice. Gets off the plane, goes to Nice, and then Leeds panic and bring in Willie Gnonto. After the fact that they had publicly said, let's welcome Bamba Dieng to the club before he'd ever even arrived in the door. So, yeah, it's very... I mean, if you look, Joe, last January, Leeds signed Connor Roberts. The January before that was the relegation season. Jorginho Rutter came in, wasn't ready for the Premier League. Everyone said it. 3 managers said he wasn't ready. Max Verber came in, who arguably was actually pretty decent for us in that season. And Weston McKennie came in, and he was an absolute disaster. So that was the last time Leeds actually flexed in January. The year before that, it was just Sam Greenwood, and he went into the under-21s. The year before that was Robbie Gotts and Jordan Stevens. They went into the under-21s. And the year before that, it was Ian Paveda, John Kevin Augustin, and Pascal Struijk. 2 of them went into under-21s. One of them was an absolute disaster. So Leeds have a horrible track record in January, even when they do spend money. And maybe that's where there's a bit of apprehension to say, well, this window's never worked out well when we have spent money. So why would we spend any money in this window now? Because, as you say, the quality might not be there. It'll possibly be a panic buy. And longer term, is this player actually got a future at the club? So there's all of that. And that is a incredibly valid argument to why Leeds shouldn't do anything in January. But it doesn't take away from the other argument of, well, what if you've got injuries? You've been saying you need a 10 since the summer. You still haven't got one. Why did you not do everything you could to get one? Now, the other point of it is, it's not always about Leeds. And that's unfortunately the position that we as fans put ourselves in, where we think, well, why are we not doing something? But because Southampton said you're not getting him. Yeah, that's it.
Because the selling club simultaneously need to agree to sell in order for a thing to happen.
The player, so my dog's barking in the background there, sorry. Postman. So Sorry, it's really loud.
It's all
Kelly.
good. I've got the
Postman.
exact same.
Yeah, she's going
So-
nuts at the door. She loves the postman. Loves him. He's not tucking. He's not
No,
tucking.
I didn't think that would be the case. No.
Yeah, she's all friendly with him. She barks until she opens the door, and then she's all and he's like, no. So probably once bitten. But yeah, I mean, like, he just both sides of the argument I think are really, really valid, and I can understand it from a Leeds perspective of not going crazy in this window or not even spending anything. But I also understand it from the other perspective of, well, it's possibly an open goal. Like, you're that close, you're top of the table, you've got a 5-point gap. You're in the driving seat. Your future is in your hands now. Your destiny is completely in your control. This time last year, we're 14 points behind the top spot. You know, it's a drastically different year. It's there. Take it, run. But again, I said at my news video this morning, I know Graham Smith has said something similar last night. I said it in a tweet, I put it out last night as well. We won't know if this has been a good strategy or not till the end of the year.
Yeah. In the same way that us sort of having those like exactly timed every single time at 70-minute subs, we don't know if it'll work till the end of the year, because that's very clearly a keep players fit and knowing what they need to do within a match kind of idea.
Yeah, it's a structure that he has for everything.
And if we have a big injury breakout, then that's bad, and that's not worked. But I think thus far,
we did survive Ampadu and Gruev, though, and that should be pointed out. Like, we did get to the top of the division without Ampadu and Gruev in our team, you know, and with the worst number 10 in the division, if you listen to people. So, and a striker who can't score goals, and yet we managed to find our way to the top of the division. So even with an injury crisis at that point, and then if you look at the bench against Cardiff, Isaac Schmidt doesn't make the bench. Like that, and there's no kids on that bench. There's no James DeBoyle. There's no Joe Gellhardt. There's no Charlie Crew on that bench. That's a full bench of first team players.
This is Sam Chambers' erasure right now.
Sam Chambers is off the bench. Pat Bamford is off the bench. Isaac Schmidt is off the bench. So if you were bringing in Adam Armstrong, does he even make the bench? Like that's I suppose that's the big point. This is a really this time last year, Daniel Farke didn't trust half of his bench. There was 3 to 4 players that were used. The rest of them weren't. This year, that bench has got depth and it's being used, and he's rotating the players that are on that. We can argue about timings of subs if you want. Leeds have had the most impact off the bench this season of any club in the division. So it's all opinion. The facts lie out different stories sometimes, but you know, we should be able to survive a bit of an injury crisis. If it's Brendan, then he's going to be forced to stick in Solomon or Ramazani in there, or even Rothwell. We'll have to see if that happens. If he gets a right centre back injury, it's going to be a left centre back going in there, and that's how. I personally think he can get away with that, because I said it last night, when I did play centre back for a while, I'm right footed, but I like playing on the left hand side of centre back because I like to come inside and hit long balls across the park. So I had to be on the inside foot. So I preferred being on the left hand side. So it depends on the player, and it should be doable. The 9's a different situation. If Pirro gets injured, then you're relying on Mateo Joseph to fire you into the Premier League. That's a huge amount of responsibility on a very young player. Or you're relying on Pat Bamford, who has just not been reliable for the last 3 seasons. So that's where the gamble is. But it's all if.
Yeah, I think no matter what, it's a gamble, because if you do sign someone, they end up not playing like Connor Roberts did last season, then you're still making a gamble. It's just the gamble is the money rather than the concept. Message from a little bit earlier, which I personally don't disagree with given who it was reported by, but you might have a little bit more insight than I do. Matt believes the Mateo bid was waffle from the club. Personally, don't believe we had a bid for him. I think we absolutely did, because I don't think the Athletic will report nothing.
Confirmed by Leeds Live, confirmed it. The Yorkshire Evening Post have confirmed it, and the Athletic have all confirmed that Leeds received a £10 million offer with add-ons for Mateo Joseph. The other part of the report that was interesting was Leeds rejected it straight away. They see him as a key player for the future, but it does say that Mateo himself is open to a move back to Spain.
Very
now,
interesting.
It also says there was multiple. Joe Donoghue today put out a tweet saying that there were multiple inquiries from Spanish clubs for Mateo. One bid, but multiple inquiries. So it's not waffle. It's been confirmed by everybody. The club have told them, yeah, this is all being confirmed. It's been confirmed on the Betis side as well. So it's not Leeds. Both sides have said it. And a lot of the bit that got me was due to their good working relationship, because of the Mark Rock and Diego Llorente deals. Like, I mean, the ones where they pulled their pants down and gave us a little spank. That one, yeah, no,
yeah, the one where they were like, oh, can we just,
can we knock
they're
$4 million off that and have them anyway? You're like, no, okay,
no,
can we
weirdly.
now? Yeah. Like, that was what it was like. So yeah, no, that was probably the only genuine thing that I started actually come out of yesterday. The reports of a very late offer for Adam Armstrong were said to be completely false. So yeah, that happened, and we held on to him. The question for me would be that little line about the player being open to a move to Spain. If that's legit, Does that cause some unrest in the dress? There's been rumblings, but does that cause a bit of unrest in the dressing room? Does that end up derailing Daniel Farke's goal of not disrupting the dressing room by making any signing in January? Does this bid then all of a sudden kick it in? But I think you'd be nuts to get rid of Mateo Joseph. All he's missing for me this season is the finish. Everything else of his game is there. The finish will come in time. He's a very young player. His next 2 or 3 seasons are going to be very good. I would be in no rush to let him go anywhere.
It feels like one of those where, like, if he does go back to Spain, that might be a next season on loan rather than the championship kind of deal. So you can play against top tier opponents rather than
those games.
Wickham. Like,
absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, let him go down to Spain. Let him play a fast-paced league. Let him play attacking football. Let him go to Betis on loan for a season if he wants to, and let him get a ton of minutes and play as the main striker. And then you bring him back the year after when he's 23, 24, ready to go. Yeah.
And if you do put in a sell clause, you make it a stupid number that Spanish clubs will not be able to match, because at that point we'll be a Premier League club and we can just say no. Yeah. Question for both of us: if Bamford was fit, do you think they'd accept the Gervais bid? Not for me in the slightest, because I think even if Bamford was fit right now,
Bamford bid.
I think if Bamford bid?
But there was, John Eustace out straight said he wanted him publicly in a press conference. John Eustace said Pat Bamford was on his long list of players that he wanted, and then Pat got injured. So I think had Pat not got injured, Pat would likely be either playing for Wrexham or Blackburn right now. Jay Rodriguez signed for Wrexham, so that was their replacement for Bamford. That was the thing. So I think Bamford would have been the one that went, and Leeds would have still looked for another player. And Daniel Farke kind of said last week himself, you can't rely on Pat.
Yeah,
it would have been Joe's.
At the latest, Pat is that was a fun hiccup. Pat is probably leaving in the summer. I believe.
I nearly bank on that. Partying the ways.
Too small squad. Give a couple of injuries to our first team players, or the odd suspension could create an issue like last season, like the last window. Bielsa. I think it's a
little bigger. Well, we're not that, and that's. I mean, depending on if we get an injury to a 9 and a 10, 100%. That makes perfect sense. I think the odd suspension we can handle. I mean, if it's one suspension every now and then, we've got multiple covers at fullback, we've got multiple covers at centre back, we've got multiple covers in the centre midfield, we've got multiple covers in the wing areas. The 9 and the 10 are the question mark. And if it's only a suspension for a game or two, then you put one of the other players in, and you should be okay for a game or two. It's just if it's anything longer term, if it's a 2-month injury to Brendan Aronson, if it's a 3-month injury to Joel Piroe or for Rosemont the last 6-8 games of the season, then 100%. But we're not as thin as last year. That bench is much more stacked in terms of quality. And it's also, as I've already said, Daniel Farke is using his bench this year, where last year he wasn't. Last year it was Liam Cooper, maybe, Connor Roberts, maybe, and then it was swapping the strikers around. That was it. That's all he ever used. So this year we've seen him change both wingers in every game. We've seen him change the 9 and the 10, and we've seen him change the fullbacks as well. So there's a lot more depth there. And again, as I said, Isaac Schmidt wasn't on the bench. Pat Bamford's not on the bench. They're 2 players that still come back on as well. So there's a bit more depth there than there was last year.
And at the same time, we very, very quickly forget that we've already gone through a period where our 2 starting central midfielders were out, and we hadn't played the other 2 at all. And they came in, and now we're in a position where it's like, well, you can't drop those 2 either. And we can do that exact same thing in not in midfield. We've done that in midfield. On Wednesday, because Milani is great and Nonto is great. I think the 10 is potentially the only issue, but we saw in the last match, Piroe is apparently good at being a 10 when he's not playing as a 10. So it's all getting very confusing. I don't know what's going on, but I think we'll be fine.
I genuinely think we will be. I mean, if Willie Nonto comes into some form, there's a serious player there as well. So look, I think it's a strong enough squad. I think the squad is still. I don't understand that in the space of 48 hours, Leeds have gone from having the best squad in the division to being in trouble. I mean, that's the narrative shift overnight. It's how can you be the best team in the division and then all of a sudden panic? Yes, the other teams have gotten better, but who did Tom Cannon, Ben Burton, Diaz, Harry Clark, and Hamza Chowdhury? They've got one more. I think Sheffield United brought in yesterday as well. So Wilson, Insador, and Enzo Lafie for Sunderland, 2 very good signings. Enzo Lafie is a cracking signing. And then if you look at Burnley, Oliver Sone, John Joe Shelby, Ashley Barnes. Come on. Are they going to get into the Leeds team? And then Marcus Edwards is the obvious one where you're like, Jesus, that's a banging sign. But why is he going to the Championship? There has to be a question mark. Why did no other Premier League club look at Marcus Edwards? Why were Burnley the only side that went for Mark and got him for cheap as well? So you have to question that as well, because he's a player that's been on form in Europe this year. Like, he's been doing really, really well. Why did Almiron not bring him to Almiron, whatever his name is, at Manchester United? Why did he not pinch him and bring him to Manchester United? Because he was an important player for him. So everyone's done what they've needed to do, but does that bring their squads back up to level? Like, I mean, do the players that Burnley brought in, does that increase their amount of goals they're going to score? Does it create more chances for them? Does it help them counterattack? Because against Leeds, they just didn't come out. Against most sides, they just don't come out. So if you're not creating goal chances, doesn't matter who you've got up front, he's not going to score goals. So I don't know if that changes their dynamic. I know they brought in another player as well. Sheffield United, for me, arguably the best window. I think Tom Cannon's a very smart signing because he's a bully. And I think you need one of those players in this division. Ben Burton Diaz will score goals. Harry Clark's a good centre back. And Hamza Chowdhury's a smashing midfielder. So they're in a better position. But I don't care if Leeds go up first or second as long as Leeds go up. And I still think the top two have the best squads. And I think everyone else below them is just a bit behind. And I think we'll pull away. And then the other part is when we come into the summer, if we are promoted, we've saw with the teams that have already gone up, the players they brought in are all from those teams. So those players are coming straight back out that side and going back down again. So, yeah.
I think Burnley, anyway, are incredibly close to having really, really big problems because they are a James Trafford lull-in form away from, now we're conceding significantly more goals than we were. We're screwed. Because looking at expected goals against, we're doing better than they are. And even then, we have conceded fewer goals than we in theory should have, which I think we forget given the amount of silly ones that end up bobbling their way in. We had this conversation yesterday on stream when someone tried to persuade me that I was still backing Illan Meslier. I was like, you've not listened to me for the last 2 months, have you, friend?
Very clearly, Illan Meslier, reduce the amount of shots he has to face, protect him at all costs because he's going to play. Let's just keep the ball away from him.
Yeah. Although I think that should be what you do for any goalkeeper anyway, right?
It should be, but in this case, I would be a little bit more, and we saw it with Ethan Ampadu against Hull when he got the ball on the left corner flag and he ran across the end line. And instead of passing the ball across to Meslier to clear it, he went 40 yards across the park with a big hump and put it straight out of play. So there's a lack of trust there for me. And that will be rectified, I would imagine, in the summer. One of the first things that Leeds do as a goalkeeper.
Yeah. Is that a case of, do you think Meslier goes out or do you think Meslier stays as backup? Because I genuinely don't know where I'm selling.
He doesn't want to be backup. He said he didn't go to Chelsea in the summer because he didn't want to be back up there. So, he clearly is a player that can back himself.
I forgot about the whole thing. That was very weird.
It wasn't this summer, it was last summer, but it was pretty public. And he had said, he was asked about it himself and he commented on it. Farke talked about the fact that he decided to stay and turned down a move. So there was genuine interest. And you might look back on that now and go, probably should have taken the money. Hindsight's easy. But yeah, I mean, that's why Farke is backing him because he gave Farke his backing. So, or Farke him, vice versa. But yeah, so yeah, look, it's just, I'd have changed it. I'd have put Darlow in, being completely honest. I think it would have just calmed the back line down a little bit. But as I've been saying since the second mistake, at this point, it's no longer Illan Meslier's fault if he makes a mistake. It becomes the manager's problem because the manager was the one that, on the evidence, still backed the goalkeeper. So he's Meslier's kind of got free hits for the rest of the year because if he does get it wrong, you're like, well, Farke put him back in.
At what point for the rest of the season, if we're assuming that there are no errors except for one, at what point down the line do you say, no, actually, it's fair, he's probably earned his spot back in the side? Because if he doesn't make an error for 15 of the remaining 16 games, at that point you're like, well, yeah, fair enough. I mean, within 16 games, any goalkeeper's going to make an error at some stage.
Yeah. Do we keep him then? No.
Probably not. No, but
because he's shown he's got errors in his game every season, and we've seen over the last two. I still think he's going to end up being a very, very good goalkeeper. I mean, Marco Silvestri got an awful time here. He went on to have a very good career in Italy as a goalkeeper in Serie A. So you just don't know with goalkeepers when they're going to click, when they're going to mature properly. So I still think he'd be a very good goalkeeper. I just don't think it's going to be here. That's the problem. I just think that there's too much. I mean, ironic cheers every time he catches the ball. It's not going to help his confidence. I think we're in the same position as we were at Bamford. It's like, look, I think a parting of the ways is probably needed here for both sides, for his career and for our future. And I think if he was to stay at Leeds going into next season in the Premier League and we were looking at that squad, I think there'll be a lot of negative comments towards, well, what are we doing here? We're going to Premier League with a goalkeeper who has already struggled in the Premier League. So, yeah, I think Leeds will have to look at it. And I think there's been a bit of, there's unconfirmed reports that there was issues back behind the scenes at Leeds where the ownership had gone to basically Farke and said, we're concerned about the goalkeeping position. Farke said, no, I'm backing my goalkeeper. And I think Scriball had that as well. I think Barron might have said something like that as well. But that was the rumor, was that after the Hull City game, the ownership had gone to Farke and said, look, we need to look at the goalkeeping position. And Farke said, no, we don't.
No. Is that likely a case of... Because I don't think that Farke sees Meslier as the Premier League keeper. No. I think it's more a case of, no, we don't. If we're talking priorities for January, there are other jobs to do.
Yeah.
Which didn't proceed to get done, but I still think we'll be fine. One very, very quick sentence answer to this question. We have another segment prepared. We love a good segment. Yeah. More like, we're gonna be okay, right, Joe?
Shocking. That was shocking.
A whole 30 seconds. It was great fun. So based on last week's stream, we did some predictions for points tallies. We did some predictions for where we finish in the table. What are we thinking now? Last week we thought we'd sign someone.
We did, yeah.
And this week we have not signed someone. So are we still confident about getting promoted? Are we still... Because at the same time, we've not signed someone, but also we have achieved a historic win. So it's...
Yeah. That historic win can pollute people's minds because it was only 2 games a game earlier, or 2 games earlier, we were drawing 0-0 with Burnley and the world was on fire. So we forget very quickly what it can go back to. I'm still confident we go up. I still think we win top 2. I don't think it'll be as comfortable maybe as we thought. I still don't know about top position. I can't call it. I think Sheffield United have a very strong squad now. I think Leeds have a very strong squad. So I think it's those two. It's theirs to lose, I think. And I don't really care about the title, if I'm being honest. I just want to get out of this league. You know, we had our moment a couple of years ago. I'd love to have a moment over in Leeds when they have the trophy, but maybe that's to be worried about the rest of the season. Just need to keep making a gap between us and Burnley and Sunderland, and then we'll worry about the top position when it comes. But yeah, I'm still confident we go up.
Yeah, I think if I'm looking at the top 4, I think we're definitely in the conversation. Sheffield United are definitely in the conversation. And then there's something in me that is screaming that conceding 9 goals in 30 matches is not something that you can sustain.
No.
And that Burnley have a drop-off coming. And I think Sunderland have made the right signings to keep their performances going throughout that period, whereas Burnley, at some point, are going to start messing up. Like, those 0-0 draws with Portsmouth are going to turn into 1-0 losses because they just don't go forward enough. Maybe Edwards fixed that, but I don't think that's the case because Parker ball.
Well, that's it. And it's predictable as well. You look at when they played against Leeds, the ball was... what's their left back centre name? Esteve gets the ball, comes out with it, goes to the left-hand side of the park, big left-footed diag across the park to Jadon Anthony. That was the ball. They just kept doing the same thing. And the fullbacks, after a couple of balls, you're like, right, I know where this is going. I'll just intercept the cross now, or I'll intercept the long ball. So it's readable. And I think even if you put Edwards in there, it's going to be the same kind of ball that goes to Edwards. Now, he might be better with it when he gets it, but if you can cut it the cross or you can cut it the ball, you could have Edwards' involvement in the game. So, yeah, and I've been saying this for a while. The second half of the season is very different because teams that are down there at the bottom that might not have thought they were there will now have to play differently in the second half of the season to pick up points they wouldn't have expected to pick up normally, which is going to change the look and feel of most of the games. I think we saw it with Cardiff. I mean, Jesus, if that's what's going to happen when you come out and try and play against us, great, keep doing it. We'll destroy you. But there's going to be teams in the bottom 3 that are just going to have to come to Ellen Road or have Leeds come to them and go, well, we can't sit back against them today because we need to get a point. We need to get something out of this game or else we're in trouble because, you know, most managers will look at their fixture list for the entire season. They'll plot out where they think their points are coming. When you get to halfway through, you're looking back and going, well, actually, yeah, we're 6 points behind where we should be. And we've got to make
try and pick some up somewhere.
So. These are all wins here, but that big L from Leeds needs to turn into a D, you know, for a draw or something. So it can change how the managers approach the second half of the season. And we saw that ourselves last year when we went on that run. All of a sudden, teams stopped playing low blocks against us. And we were like, great stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, I think the second half of the season will change the look. And it might help Burnley. It might not.
And just before we close, because we're just going to go for half an hour today because it's just a nice short one. It's like I did 4 hours yesterday. You guys can't complain at me.
Slave to his craft.
What are we thinking for the scoreline for Coventry tomorrow?
2-1 I've gone for. I think this is Frank Lampard, to his credit, and I hate saying this out loud, but Frank Lampard, to his credit, has gotten Coventry moving again. I think they'll probably get a goal. They're a home side, but I think we'll get 2. I think Lampard will fancy himself to play against Leeds. And this is a big game for him.
I think them trying to play against us will be a mistake, and I think we will be able to keep them out, and I think we will get 3, is what I'm going to go with.
Lovely.
So, yeah. Thanks for popping in and watching. Thank you, Joe, for saying hello.
Hello.
Anything to plug? Anything?
Today's news is out. We've gone into the Matteo Joseph bid in a bit more detail from all of the facts that are floating around. Joe Rothwell was speaking about his future at the club and how his loan is going, so we've got some detail on that, as well as we've covered every single player that Leeds were linked with, credibly linked with, in the January window, and where they actually ended up as well. Oh, and some detail on Jeremiah Mullen's exit from the club yesterday as well.
Was that the Dunfermline one? Or?
Yeah, loan with a view to a permanent move, but he's out of contract at the end of the season. He's expected to leave along with Keane Coleman, Luca Thomas, and Sonny Perkins, who's now gone. Yeah.
Fantastic. Right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for appearing, Joe. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, pop a like on the stream, subscribe if you're not yet. That's always really appreciated. Or become a channel member. That's always lovely. And you get a bunch of videos and stuff early. It's fantastic. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you later. Toodaloo. It helps if you click the end stream button, doesn't it? That's